constantly putting something off, but you say it's because you don't have time. But if you look at all the other things you're spending your time doing, is it that you don't have time, or is it that you're scared to actually come? The lighting looks good, the setup looks good, the challenges are fixed, and here we are. Hello everyone, welcome back again to my channel. My name is Dan Bourgeoise, aka Brenda. I'm hoping I wouldn't have to introduce myself very soon. You guys will just know who I am. But I want to first say thank you to everybody who has watched my last videos, everybody who followed the Purpose and Passion series, which I'm gonna link here if you haven't seen it, everybody who sent me a message, if you know me personally, everybody who just watched on it because you stumbled on my video, thank you very much. For every view that I get, for every comment that I get, it's just an encouragement to say I should keep going. It's an encouragement to say I'm on the right path. And so I just want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you for taking the time to spend with me. And thank you again for tuning in today. Once again, for those who are new, this channel was created, the mandate and the idea of having this channel was to create a space that I could be of service. And I'm hoping that every single message that comes through this channel either makes your life slightly easier, either gives you a little bit of direction, gives you experience in the things that you don't have to go through to learn. And I'm just hoping that I can add a little bit of color to the painting of your life. So that's why we're here. For the next series, we're going to be focusing on a few foundational core traits or skills that I think you need to learn to be able to succeed at your purpose and your passion, to be able to be that entrepreneur that you want to be able to take that next step. And even if you're here and you're not an entrepreneur, or you're just here and you just want to learn something, you're feeling a little blah in life, I still feel like these traits will set you up for success. So let's get right into it. For this video, I want to talk about the fear of failure. So let's say you're a faithful bougie person and you watched all my last few videos, you've followed everything about purpose and passion, you found yourself in a rut, but now you feel like you're on the way to something great, and you've done your research, you're doing your self-connect, you downloaded my free that would be great, my free assessment. If you're at this stage in life where you're like, Brenda, I didn't need your last videos, I know exactly what I want to do with my life, I've always wanted to do it, I have the plan in mind, but then at the same time you're scared. That's what we're talking about today, the fear of failure. So what exactly is the fear of failure? The fear of failure is those moments where you feel like you're not good enough to do something, or those moments where you see something that you're interested in and you're like, there's no way I can do that, just no way. Or when you're scared about disappointing people in your life, you feel like if you were to attempt to do something, you're probably not going to be good at it, you're going to disappoint people, or you're not going to do it correctly and people are going to be disappointed by that. Or another example is the fear of just feeling like you don't measure up to the crowd. All those things signify or are synonyms of the fear of failure. Or if you failed before and you're just like, I'm not gonna do it again. I know a few friends who wrote the CPA 4 or 5 times. I know people who wrote the more than 3 times. I know people who wrote their board exam for med school multiple times. And so if those people were paying too much attention to the fear of failure, the probability of them getting to the next step would have been really small. But those are indications that you're afraid to fail. Or other ways that you might be experiencing it and you don't even know it is when you constantly give yourself negative thoughts about something that you're trying to do. Like, why are we humans so quick to assume that the worst is going to happen? Why don't we start with assuming that the best is going to happen? So negative thought, negative self-talk, or just when you have that hesitation, right? I mentioned people who know exactly what they want to do, they're on the right track, but then you're hesitating. Every time you have an opportunity to make that next move, you're kind of thinking about it, you're hesitating, you're slowing down. And also just the unwillingness, like, so I was saying unwillingness, just the unwillingness to even try. Like, you know exactly what you want to do, but because of the fear of failure, you're even just scared to try, to even attempt it. That can be very crippling. So all those are things that indicate the fear of failure. How would I know if I am actually experiencing the fear of failure? Because some people are aware that they're scared to fail, but for other people, it's not so obvious. Two indications that you might be scared to fail is when you don't feel like you're good enough. You feel like, I would love to attempt this, I would love to try, but I just don't feel like I can. You don't feel like you're good enough, or you feel like you're scared to disappoint the people in your life. So for a lot of people, you know what you're about to do, you know what you want to work on, but at the same time, you care too much about the people in your life and what they think about you, and you care too much about their expectation of your success. And so that could also show up as you being scared to disappoint them, and you'll be surprised how far that can go. It moves to a point where it affects whether or not you take the next step. Another point is just the fear that you don't measure up, right? A lot of times, like on social media, we see the finished product of the work that people have put in for years. We see finished product of a photo shoot, for example. You see a photo on IG, but you don't know the thought that went into the clothing, putting it together, the photo shoot, the editing, the scheduling it on the timeline. Like, a lot of work goes into that, but then we take the finished product and we use that as our benchmark to measure up as to see whether or not that's something that we can accomplish. It's a completely unfair comparison. Like, so that fear of not measuring up to what you're seeing, which is the final product, which went through multiple iterations, makes you to decide that, you know what, I'm just not even gonna attempt. So that's one reason, or one indication that you're experiencing the fear of failure. Another one is just negative self-talk, thought and talk. Another one is just negative self-talk, right? And negative self-thought. Like, you know, sometimes you find yourself in conversations and people get really defensive about somebody trying to make a move, but really it's like a reflection of their own insecurities, right? That negative self-thought comes out. And what this one is about is, maybe you think, you know, I got it, I ain't scared, I can move forward, I know what to do if I need to, you know, to take on this endeavor. But if you are negatively thinking about it, you're negatively thinking about your strengths, you're negatively thinking about your abilities or whether or not you succeed, it's very easy for you to easy for you to not make the move, because you are experiencing the fear of failure, even in your confidence. Another thing is just hesitation, right? Sometimes you find yourself hesitating, you're overthinking something, you know, nothing really indicates that you should be scared. There's nothing physical that indicates that you should, you know, hold back. Like, you've done your checks and balances, there's no reason why you should hesitate, but people just hesitate. So that's another indication of the fear of failure. And again, like I said, a lot of people experience it, but they don't know that they're experiencing it. And also just unwillingness, like unwillingness to try. You know, for some people, the last videos I've posted, they're like, yeah, she's too intense, or or they're like, yeah, I just want to do my 9 to 5 and I'm not willing to try. So that unwillingness to try, if you were to go a little deeper, sometimes you'll find that it's basically that you're scared to fail. So now I think there's a really close, just right now I was sitting here trying to set up my space to shoot, and I'm not gonna lie, something that I thought would take me like 30 minutes, or you know, it took me over an hour plus. And that is because of struggling with perfection, right? You want the lighting to be perfect. You're like, what time should I shoot? I'm checking the weather. And so there's a very close relationship between the fear of failure and perfectionism, right? And I feel like a lot of creators, I have friends who are extremely creative, but because of being a perfectionist, it stops you from making that move. And honestly, I would like to do a video on perfection itself, but perfection is also only for Jesus, okay? That's a starting point. So, for my Christians in the room, perfection is only for Jesus. But yeah, so the close relationship between being a perfectionist and the fear of failure is that most of the time perfectionists don't make a move because they're waiting for the thing that they want to move with to be perfect. The downside to that is you might never make the move. And I can use myself as an example. I've been working on this YouTube channel for a long time. I actually started creating my podcast 2 years ago. It's called Muses and Mouths. The channel is connected to this one, so you can subscribe there and just wait for the first episode. But it's called Muses and Mouths. I bought my theme song over a year ago, which is what I use now for my YouTube channel. But it is because of perfection or because of perfectionism that I was not able to launch as soon as I would have liked to. And so now I find myself in a situation where things are different for me, and I just decided done is better than perfect, right? So the relationship between that and the fear of failure is usually when you're scared to fail, you don't move forward. When you want everything to be perfect, you don't move forward. Either path leads you to no destination. Either path leads you to not doing anything. And so it's very easy for people who are perfectionists to think that they're successful at what they're doing, they're getting everything right. But a lot of times, if they look at all the things that they haven't done because they're waiting for it to be perfect, they'll see that there's a really close relationship between the fear of failure and perfectionism. So I'm going to give you 5 ways to identify that you are dealing with the fear of failure. And these are very simple ways. I would say everything on this channel is tied to entrepreneurship and efficiency, but for everything that I share, I can see it applying to your life in many different ways. So 5 ways to identify that you're scared to fail. 1, you highly and severely care about what people think. So this could be in anything. This could be in a relationship. This could be deciding whether or not to date that guy or that girl. This could be in deciding whether or not to take that exam, right? You're so scared about what people say, of their impression of you. This could be in deciding to quit that job, right? Like, you want to quit that job, you know exactly that it's not working for you. It happens to a lot of us. You know that the job's not working for you. It hasn't been working for a long time, but you're like, what are people going to say? Or to quit anything else? Just saying. So that's one of them. The other one is procrastination. If you find yourself constantly putting something off, but you say it's because you don't have time, but if you look at all the other things you're spending your time doing, is it that you don't have time, or is it that you're scared to actually come face to face with that thing that you're putting off and you don't want to do? Another one is just the feeling of hopelessness. And that phrase made me think of depression. The feeling of hopelessness, the feeling of just like, I think I've come to the point where I don't care anymore. I think I've come to the point where I don't think my dreams matter anymore. I think I've come to the point where I'm so overwhelmed with the things that have happened to me that I cannot think beyond where I am. I can't think beyond the challenges I'm going through right now. That is a feeling of hopelessness. And first of all, if you're in that space, I pray for you. If you're in that space, I hope that something will bring light into your life. If you're in that space, I hope that you listening to this video will make you to think out of the box. But in relation to the fear of failure, hopelessness puts you in a place where you can't even think about attempting the things that you have left behind, the goals, the dreams. And for a lot of people who are in that space, it's also close to giving up, right? And yeah, that's one indication that you might be struggling with the fear of failure. Some people also got to hopelessness because they failed at things that they trusted to have their back. They failed at things that they knew were going to be successful, but it didn't turn out that way. And so that's how they end up in hopelessness. Another way to identify that you're dealing with the fear of failure is worrying. Constantly worrying. I'm actually struggling with that. And I just think, you know, for my Christians in the room, I'm always gonna go there, guys. That's my foundation. So for whatever you believe in, you have to use what I say to speak to you. But for my Christians in the room, you know, the Bible says you cannot worry and have faith at the same time. And I just feel like that's the only solution. But worrying about how is it gonna go? I don't have everything I need. I don't have all the tools. Who is going to fund it? Where would I get financing from? You know, where would I make the time? Just start. The fear of failure, if you're worrying, you're never going to get to the thing that you're trying to do if you keep worrying. And the last one is excuses. So I said five things that you can use to identify if you're dealing with the fear of failure and you just don't know it. Is obviously hopelessness, the feeling of hopelessness, worrying constantly, making excuses, procrastinating, concerns about what people say, and I forgot one, so it's actually 6. Easily being distracted. A lot of times I feel like when you're on the path to do the thing that you're meant to do, you can find ways to give yourself excuses to not continue the course, right? So you're working on something and you're in the middle of it, you're finally sat down, you're like, I'm gonna do this research, I'm going to go after this thing, but then you get easily distracted. Actually, what your mind is doing is looking for things to distract you from doing what you actually want to do, what you're actually meant to sit down to do. So I do feel like that is your mind sort of playing tricks on you, that you got distracted, but really you're trying to distract yourself so that you don't focus on what's in front of you and actually get what you plan to get done. Next is, where does the fear of failure come from? I think a lot of times we're scared. We don't even know that these are learned patterns that we've acquired over time, either on our own or from outside sources or from past experiences. So I'll give you a few ways that this fear of failure could have come into you. So I was saying that the fear of failure can show up from multiple sources, and one of them is, you know, the people that we grew up with, our parents, our mentors, cousins. If we grew up in an overprotective environment, if we grew up without seeing other people take risks, if we grew up without being encouraged to go after things that we know we weren't going to be good at, if we grew up in a house where everything you did was okay, or in a house where everything you did was wrong. Either of those things represent how your parents, your upbringing, your mentorship can affect how you see the fear of failure. If you grew up in a very strict environment also, even though you're an adult, you're out of the house, you're living life, there's a probability that you're still dealing with those restrictions as you've gotten older. And that's one of the sources where the fear of failure can come from. Feeling that restriction still shows up in your daily life. Another thing which I was mentioning earlier is trauma. And trauma shows up in many ways. I know a lot of times when we ask God for something, again, speaking to my Christians in the room, we ask God for something and let's say we don't get it right away. We have a tendency, God for something, we don't get it right away. We have a tendency to think that, you know, and I think the other thing is, what does failure mean to you, right? A lot of times people are actually successful at what they do. They've made strides, they've made progress, but because they didn't have that one thing that they wanted, they consider it like they failed. A great example is marriage, right? You see us girls, we have our degrees, we have our masters, we have great careers, we're great aunties, great daughters. We take care of our families. We, you know, we think of blessing the church. We bless people around us pending when we have a family. But for some of us, it still feels like you failed because you don't have that one thing. So I think sometimes just redefining what failure is to you, redefining how you see failure, redefining what failure means to me, what is important to me. And even when you do define what failure is to you, are you checking if that's something that's important to you, or something that the world or people said should be important to you? Because a lot of times the things that we believe in, the things that we are so tied to, and we feel like, oh, I haven't failed because I didn't finish my master's, or I haven't failed because I didn't finish my first degree. You have to also ask yourself, like, is this because it's important to me, or is it because somebody said I have to have that done? Am I still trying to seek somebody's approval in making sure that I have this done? So that's a really good thing to look out for, and I really hope that you take those with a grain of salt. So I was saying the sources of failure. I talked about how you grew up and who's around you. I talked about trauma, and lastly I talked about what failure means to you. What's your definition of failure? So I feel like this video is going to be super long. I might split it into part 1 and part 2, but for the next thing I wanted to talk about is the impacts and the consequences of being afraid to fail.